and last but not least, our member spotlight is on Harrop-Procter Community Co-op, and I'd like to did we spotlight Katie Hill from Harrop-Procter Community Co-op? Like to give you a warm welcome. Katie, we're more or less neighbors, but this is the first time I've seen you face to face, so
Yes,
I'm
exactly.
really happy to welcome you here. And just to start off, could you just introduce yourself and let us know where Harrop-Procter Community Co-op is and your relationship to this co-op?
Sure. Harrop-Procter is about a half an hour outside of Nelson, but accessed by a cable ferry. So we're a really small community of about 600 people year round. We tend to almost double in the summertime because we're right on gorgeous Kootenay Lake looking out over the Purcell Mountains. I'm one of the directors of the cooperative. I actually joined the cooperative as a director when we first started back in the 1990s, and then life took me, in various places and away. And when I retired back to the Kootenays a few years ago, I rejoined the board. So it's kind of neat to have been there at the beginning and to now be there 20 odd years later.
So that's great, Katie. So you can actually tell from your own experience, you can tell us what the impetus was behind starting the co-op
Well,
and
yeah.
the need or
So
the problem that it was going out to
yeah,
solve. Sorry.
Yeah, as I mentioned, we're a fairly small community, and as everybody probably recalls, over the years, BC's had ongoing what we called the War in the Woods back in the 1990s, where there was, anytime there was new logging proposed, there would be fights and blockades, and people would be arrested, and on and on it went. Um, so as the Ministry of Forest started to look towards our area for the issuing of a forest license, and we got together and looked at our own community and said, so, rather than the folks that are really concerned about watershed protection and so forth, fighting with the folks that make a living from forestry, why don't we go in together? And so we went together, we applied for the forest license and made it clear that our intention was to log using Forest Stewardship Council criteria. We would not be logging kind of the usual models, and that we would focus on the watersheds of our community and wildfire protection for our community and employment for our community. So we became one of the first community forest licenses granted in the whole province. So yeah, that's kind of how we got kicked off. And then since then, we've expanded that, continued to develop our sustainable forestry practices, and now do a number of research partnerships with UBC around the way that we log, because it's a little different. And we've started a sawmill a few years ago, so that's expanded employment in the community and uses the products that we produce locally.
So you're already kind of sharing some of your successes. And so I wanted to ask you about some of the things that you're proud of. Because I read the local paper, I understand, and I think we profiled it in the BCCA newsletter too, that your co-op recently received a significant expansion grant. Was that for the mill, or can you tell
Yeah,
us
it's
about?
for our sawmill, and actually that's the interesting thing is it's not an expansion grant, and which gets back to we're a little bit of a unicorn in this kind of a world, I think. So we have our sawmill, and because we started it, on shoestring, like so many of us did back in the early days, our equipment was ancient and starting to fall apart, and so we also looked at how well is our sawmill aligning with our commitment to managing effectively and sustainably and protecting our watersheds. So we're refreshing our equipment, and we're creating a safer environment for the staff and for customers, with the idea of being more efficient in the use of the logs that we are able to bring down from our own forests. Because we don't bring down the large logs, we bring down the small logs, and keep the large log standing. So you need different equipment for that. So we're adapting so that we can deal with the kind of logs we're bringing down, and that we can maintain an efficient mill that's not necessarily running on gas-powered equipment. We're moving everything onto electric, and creating covered areas and noise reduction and so forth for staff. And then finally, we're adding equipment that will allow us to use the waste products. We have lots of rural properties in the area. So we're going to be baling all of our sawdust and shavings so that they can go to our local farms and our livestock and that sort of thing. And then we're just doing a bit of an experimental biochar production with our local tree nursery. So this year they've put aside 15,000 trees, and we're producing the growing medium from our biochar, and we're going to pilot that and see if that's a viable way to deal with all our slab ends and convert them into biochar that can be used that way.
Yeah. So it sounds like you're rife with successes. You're innovating, you're growing, you're adapting. What are some of the challenges that you face in your community co-op?
Well, I think it's a couple, and they're probably pretty common to a lot of co-ops, but for us, there's a bit of a mix of the industry that we're in. Like I said, we're a bit of a unicorn. I believe we're the only community forest that has a mill of its own, which makes us a little odd. So right now we're looking for a new mill manager. Our current mill manager is heading towards retirement, and you can find lots of people with experience in the sawmill industry, but finding experienced sawmill operators who also really understand the cooperative movement, why we're a cooperative, and what our focus is, that's the trick. So, so for us, that's a real challenge right now. Staffing, of course, is always a challenge, and I think the other is just really having the community, as new people come into the community, understand what we are, because we've become a fairly large and successful business. You know, it's easy to be seen as a large and successful business rather than a community-owned cooperative, and you know the residents of the area are the stakeholders in our membership. We don't offer membership beyond our community. So it really is community driven. And that's often a bit of a dance. Once you get to a certain size, people want to kind of treat you like the man, you know?
Because the community has a fairly small population, right? What's the
Yeah, about
population?
600. Yeah.
Right. So,
yeah.
So posting for this, I'm thinking of how the BC Co-op Association can support you as a member. I mean, if you wanted us to share the posting on our social channels or something like that, that's obviously some tangible way that we could support you. But how else do you think you could best be supported by your provincial association?
Well, I think even for us participating in some of the local stuff through the UCC, yes, UCC, it's a lot of C's in there. That's been helpful as well, because you know you tend to sort of connect to the community forest groups, which is great, but we're one of the very few that is a cooperative. So really also making sure that we have our feet strongly in the kind of the cooperative movement as well is really important to us, I think. Especially as, you know, most of the folks that were around for the foundering kind of are looking like me. So we're all getting older, and there's a new, younger, keener group coming in. And I think there's lots of education to be done as those new, younger voices come in and start taking over the cooperatives. So I can
Okay,
see
we're taking notes. We're taking notes, Katie.
Yeah.
And I'm just looking at the clock. I do have some outlying questions, but I might just ask you those offline, and we can share the
Sure.
stuff that we haven't written or spoken about in some of our future newsletters or something.
Sure.
I think for the last 2 minutes, there are lots of chats in the chat. Just saying it's so great to hear the intricacies of all of our members. Congratulations to Ashcroft, and super interesting and inspirational presentation about Stocksy. So yeah, thanks for that. I do see a question, Val from Glen Valley.
Yeah, Kate, I may have missed it in your presentation, but what proportion of your 600 community members are members of the co-op?
Well, 50%.
Great, thank you. That's lovely. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.